Good afternoon to everyone who has joined in for today's special session. And we have the honor of having Bhante Yogavacara Rahula tuning in, joining us from Maryland, USA. And we are so honored that Bhante has taken up our invitation and agreed to talk on both his experiences with Bhante Gnanadīpa and of course the first part of the Satipatthana. So Bhante Yogavacara Rahula does not need an introduction, but of course for the sake of tradition, I will introduce Bhante most humbly. Bhante Rahula has been an ordained monk since 1975. Bhante Rahula received his ordination in Sri Lanka, and he's now the current principal director and teacher of the Lion of Wisdom Center in Maryland, USA. Bhante Rahula has been instrumental in bringing in the practice of yoga into the practice, or together to the practice of Theravada Buddhist meditation. And I am very excited on hearing Bhante's take on Satipatthana, and also listening to Bhante's experiences with Bhante Gnanadīpa, who unfortunately passed away at the end of September. So it has been a great loss for forest monks and monks, the sasana all over the world, because Venerable Gnanadīpa, Bhante Rahula will speak more about Bhante Gnanadīpa, was considered to be the father of forest monks, really. Father of forest monks. So Bhante Rahula, over to you, Bhante.
I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank Venerable Panyavamsa for inviting me to share my experiences both with Venerable, the late great Gnanadīpa Mahathero, and the practice of the mindfulness of the body, which is the first stage of the path to liberation. As you mentioned, I was ordained as actually a novice monk in 1975 at Tapawani. And that was also kind of a forest monastery, but the monks there weren't really practicing what I would consider, let's say, forest tradition. And then somewhere in the first couple of years that I was ordained, I heard about the Venerable Gnanadīpa, who was living at that time down in Bundala, which is a forest. It was a kuti, actually, near a village on the seacoast, on the southern seacoast of Sri Lanka. And a lay friend of mine had driven me down there, and I went to visit him. And normally he doesn't like visitors, because he was very much in seclusion. And but anyway, I went there to pay my respects to him. And for some reason we kind of got along, and he invited me to come there and to stay with him one night, and we had some discussions on the suttas. In my first year or two, I was studying the suttas at the Tapawani, and then I heard that he was also very much into the suttas, and so we had some discussions with that. On the suttas, and I saw the way that he practiced, and he was very much using mindfulness of the body as well as the whole of Satipatthana, but the mindfulness of the body as one of his grounding and primary practices, at least then at that time. So he would have been a monk already, probably about 7 or 8 years. By the time I had met him. So we were still, and we had, we came to Sri Lanka both in our mid-20s, and we were just 3 years apart, I think, in age. But so I was very inspired by his practice of the forest tradition, because he was the first monk really, and also Western monk, that I met in Sri Lanka that was really kind of living an exemplary Buddhist monk life according to the suttas. He had a kuti that was not too far and not too close to a village for alms, and he was going on Pindapata to the Bundala village for alms. And he had also been an admirer and had studied the teachings of the Venerable Gnanadīpa, who was an English monk who was living in Sri Lanka even before that. But Gnanadīpa died in about 1965, I believe, but he left behind some teachings, some unique teachings in his take on the Dhamma and the practice of, developing wisdom and so on. So we had that in common too, because I was also studying and had heard about these teachings of Gnanadīpa. So anyway, at the time, Gnanadīpa, he used the forest life to, in one sense, to overcome fear. And he was, challenged by that. And he was living in a place where there were poisonous snakes, but he didn't let that, scare him. In fact, the previous occupant of Bundala Kuti, an American monk named Sumana, had been bitten by a poisonous snake just nearby the kuti and had died because he didn't get to a quick medical treatment. But Gnanadīpa did not, let that deter him. And I was very inspired by that, and it kind of inspired my own practice of living out in the forest as well. And then later on, in years, after that initial contact, I didn't have contact with him for a long time. But he had also moved, and anytime some people found out where he was living and wanted to go and visit him, he would move to another place, even without telling people. He would kind of just vanish from where he was, and he would find another place in the forest in different parts. And he had gone up in the Kandy area and had been living in the deep forest there and changing kutis and places whenever people found out about him. So he didn't like any disciples. He didn't want to be well known. He didn't give any public teachings really. He was really following sort of the ideal solitude, but he was always studying the suttas, and he practiced the Dhamma according to the suttas. And so and that had inspired my practice a great deal. And so I've tried to follow his example as much as I could. I wasn't as successful as he was probably, but anyway, then about 12 years ago or so, when I went back to Sri Lanka, I had the chance of meeting him again, and that's when I had written this little article about him with some photos that a lot of people have since seen. But even though I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him in his later years, we kept in contact through other people. But he was an inspiration to so many other monks in Sri Lanka too, and a lot of the Sri Lankan monks. And he was, I would say, you could say maybe the father of the forest tradition in Sri Lanka. Of course, in Thailand and Burma, there had been other, monks who were considered the father of the forest tradition, like Achan Mun in Thailand and so on. But nevertheless, he was probably the premier ascetic, you could say, in Sri Lanka. It is at least amongst Western monks, and probably amongst Sri Lankan monks as well. So, I wanted to share with you, this series of talks is about the Satipatthana Sutra, because I'm sure that Venerable Gnanadīpa was using the Satipatthana Sutra as his main reference for the practice of meditation. And just the first few words of the Satipatthana Sutra, lay it all out. This is the direct way for the overcoming of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, for abolishing ignorance and for cultivating wisdom that leads to enlightenment. So, the direct way, there may be indirect ways, but, the Satipatthana Sutta is like an attack dog, it attacks the problem directly. And so, in the very first thing, after saying that, the Buddha says that, a monk finds a suitable location to meditate and sits down and keeps the posture erect. Erect is the key. That means to be able to keep the spine and the head in a straight line. And why is that? Because meditation happens between the brain and the spinal column. That's where all the senses are connected to the nervous system along the spine. And that's what relays all the sensory data to the brain where you have perception. So keeping the nervous system in an optimal state of alertness is the key point. And so, but you see a lot of meditators where the emphasis is not so much on the posture. And so a lot of them, have their head kind of down like this, and that'll lead to the slouching of the spine. And then you wind up having a fuzzy awareness, or half asleep, or just lost in your thoughts. So keeping the spine straight was really the first instruction of the Satipatthana Sutta. Of course, and then crossing the legs. And the Satipatthana Sutra is divided into 4 stages, I'm sure most of you know. Mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of the mental states, and mindfulness of the Dhamma, which these will be covered over in the following weeks by other teachers. Now, the Buddha chose mindfulness of the body first. Now, why is that? The Buddha didn't waste any words, and everything he said had a particular order for a particular reason. And of course, we all know that the essence of suffering, or the deepest cause of suffering, is within the mind, and basically is ignorance and the craving and the desires that have evolved through ignorance. That means not knowing the truth. But the mind is not easily to get a hold of. It's not easy to just immediately start watching one's mind and thoughts, because they're occurring at a very deep level. Actually our thoughts originate deep in the nervous system and the unconscious mind. And so in order to be able to observe our thoughts, we have to be grounded and centered in the body and attentive to the nervous system, because that's where the sensory impulses are coming through. And that's what triggers off, the contacts with the senses, and triggers off the feeling. Depending on contact arises feeling. And depending on feeling arises, the various other thoughts and perceptions. So being centered and grounded in the body is, one of the important aspects about mindfulness of the body. Now, when most people read mindfulness of the body, a lot of them think that, it's about seeing the body as this smelly, dirty thing that we should, detach from and kind of disassociate with. Now, in one level that may, there's some truth to that, you know, in the various later stages of mindfulness of the body. But in my opinion, that's not the most important aspect of it. But basically, this body is what most people identify with. But anyway, first of all, the mindfulness of the body instructions is the mindfulness of breathing. So you start developing concentration on developing the anapanasati. And the purpose of that is to get one centered in the body. Because normally our mind is wandering around, you know, in the past and future, getting distracted in all the sensory impressions. And very rarely are we centered and relaxed in the body. Because but the body was the true home for the mind. The mind and the body, you could say, were born together at the moment of conception. And for 9 months, all the mind could feel were these sensations of the body developing, you know, in the womb, from a one-cell organism to a multi-billion cell organism in this time of just 9 months. So, you know, that's a lot of energy going on, you know, in 9 months. This body went from a, you know, invisible one-cell organism to a multi-billion cell organism that weighed 7 or 8 pounds. So, and all that was just this energy of cells multiplying and developing the, you know, the solid features of a body. But it started just basically as a kind of an atom of energy, or, you know, at the point of conception where the mother and father produced the material elements, but it was the consciousness that drove the development of the body. So anyway, I'm just saying this to kind of set the stage that the mind was basically in the present moment, you know, most of that time that it was developing in the womb, feeling this tremendous energy and totally at one with the body, right? So, and when the baby was born, the mind is still basically in the present moment. And it's just, you know, having that direct connection with the body. And the body is actually also, it's always in the present moment. It's always just here. And so the body is actually the connection, our natural connection to the present moment. And it's also the stepping stone to reach the mind. So those are also important aspects to understand about the reason why the Buddha chose the body as the starting point for the meditation. And when we say body, that means the breathing too, because the breathing is, you know, the body. So breathing and heart beating are the two most continuous and constant things that are always going on in the body that you can easily observe. So anyway, by practicing Anapanasati, one develops initial concentration. And that helps to center the mind and the body, you know, feeling the whole breath body. And there's some differences of opinion on what, you know, the whole breath body means, but also contemplating the body in the body. And the way I take on it, and I think Venerable Gnanadīpa did also, was that, okay, we have the breathing, but and the breathing itself is a body of breathing. So that means feeling the whole in-breath, the sensations of in-breathing, and then there's a brief pause, and then the sensations of out-breathing, and then there's a brief pause, and then there's another in-breath. So those 4 phases of the breathing, the in-breath, the pause, the out-breath, and the pause, although the Buddha in the instructions didn't mention observing the pause, but if you observe the in-breath, you'll naturally understand and observe that there is a pause. even if it's just a nanosecond. And then there's the out breath. So the pause connects the in breath to the out breath. And so that's the development of the the breathing awareness, feeling the whole breath body, and then tranquilizing the body breathing in, tranquilizing the body breathing out. And so the body, especially when in terms of the next stages of the mindfulness of the body, the breathing gets you centered in the body, but then the Buddha has you start feeling the body itself. That means like the postures. And then the 4 elements. And, when you're sitting, know that you're sitting. When you're standing, know that you're standing or walking or laying down. And you know it by feeling it. But the mindfulness of the breathing is what gets you centered in the body and develops the initial concentration, ideally to the level of access concentration or even the first jhana. So the mindfulness of breathing gets you centered in what I like to call the breathing body. And then you start feeling the body as the 4 elements or the 32 parts. So, then you start feeling all these sensations. So what you feel, is the various, all these sensations of the body. And so you contemplate, the head hairs, body hairs, skin, teeth, nails, these external aspects of the body, just to see how they're impermanent. And not to say the body is something dirty. Okay, yeah, sure, it has odors and, it collects a lot of filth and so on. You have to scrub it and bathe it. But still, it's not the idea of kind of hating the body. It's just seeing, okay, the body is the body. This is the way it is. But not to get attached to it. But after analyzing the body as just being 32 parts, then the Buddha breaks it down into just 4 elements. So you're going from a larger whole body, you're aware of sitting, standing, laying down. So you have this idea of the whole body. And actually the contemplation of the body in the body means the breathing is the one body, but at the same time, that breathing is occurring within the larger body. So that's the way I interpret the idea of contemplating the body in the body. Is the breathing body is going on, but it's going on within this larger body. So I like to just use the phrase, the breathing body. And so that really gets you centered in the body. And the body is considered the laboratory for reaching the mind and the laboratory for conducting the greatest experiment into the cause of suffering. But the body is a strong attachment for people, naturally. And so part of the purpose of the Satipatthana Sutra, mindfulness of the body, is to help people detach from it. So just seeing the body as this utilitarian object, seeing it as the vehicle for the mind and the vehicle for practicing Dhamma. And we create all of our karma through our body and speech, most of it. And so we reach the mind through the body. So when you're centered in the body, you also start to see your thoughts more clearly. And you have this detachment to this kind of onlooking awareness, like a scientist sitting in the laboratory saying, oh, yeah, in this body, okay, there's all these head hairs, body hairs, teeth, nails, all these organs are all subject to impermanence. And it's just the body. It's produced through the past karma. The mother and father provide the material things. Consciousness come from a past life. And it's just work. Each life is like the mind working out its karma. And it uses the body for that. And that's the way that, the Buddha wanted us to develop this insight to the body, not using this body to, to get rich or to get famous or to have power over others and so on. So, and so after seeing the body as the 32 parts, all of them are impermanent and subject to breakage and malfunction and so on. But it doesn't mean we wanted to hate the body. It means we've got to take care of it so the body functions the way it should, so that we can also meditate properly. And then he breaks it down into just the 4 elements. So you're going from a large solid body into now then just 32 different parts. And then you're breaking the parts down into just 4 elements. And this was one of my favorite insightful aspects of developing mindfulness of the body. It was just seeing the body as these elemental vibrations of solidity, fluidity, temperature, and motion, or earth, fire, water, and air. But I prefer to use the terms, I think it's more illustrative, as just the elemental vibrations rather than elements. When you say 4 elements, and people are thinking about all the chemistry elements that you read about, iron and potassium, magnesium, and all these things. But 4 elements are not like that. They're the way that the life force manifests itself. In other words, even the body, we have the solid body, but the body is made up of just billions of cells. And cells are made up of many, many molecules. And molecules are made up of a certain amount of atoms. And so the amount of atoms that are in a molecule determine its qualities, whether it's going to be of a fluid nature, a solid nature, a temperature nature, a motion, and so on. And what are atoms? Are electrons, electricity, right? And then, of course, electrons are broken down into protons and neurons and all these other kind of, invisible things. But I like to see it as just electricity. So actually, the solid body in itself is just energy. And that's what I think the deepest aspect of developing mindfulness of the body. Seeing these solid body parts as being impermanent, that's one thing. But actually breaking it down and developing the awareness that you're just feeling these amorphous kind of vibrations. So you don't turn these vibrations into, oh, that's my knee, or that's my shoulder. It's just earth vibration. It's just water vibration. It's not me or mine. This is how the Buddha wanted us to develop this mindfulness of the body, to break it down. So it's really very scientific, you could say. And I like to regard the Buddha as being a scientist of the body and mind. And this body is the laboratory, and he used the mind as sort of the microscope. And the longer you keep the attention focused in the body without letting it get dragged out into the past and the future, then that's how you develop the concentration. And concentration is like turning up the power of a microscope, right? So the longer you stay focused and centered in the body without getting distracted by the 5 hindrances or the senses, then it's like you turn up the power of the microscope. So the solid body then becomes just all these different parts and sensations. And then that just becomes just these energy vibrations. And the feeling of the body can also just kind of disappear. And you see how the body is actually just a concept in the mind. And this just made up of this aggregate of vibrations that the mind then creates perceptions of body parts, and then a body, and then this body belongs to me. All that is created within the mind. in the later process. But it starts there in understanding the nature of how this feeling of a body originates. And so that is the deeper level of wisdom that's developed when you are contemplating the mindfulness of the body. So it's a gradual process of deconstructing the body from the clinging and infatuation to this external body that is most people's strongest attachment or identification, and also it causes them the most pain and suffering. I mean, some people their whole life, they're plagued by diseases and pains in the body and so on, and it consumes their whole life, for some people. So that's why mindfulness of the body was important, but also for developing that centeredness, because again, the body is the stepping stone for reaching the mind. So when you're centered in the body, what you naturally feel are the sensations. Sensations, or even hearing sensations, body sensations, even mind vibrations. You can start seeing them. These are the feelings, which we talked about in the next talk. But the mind getting centered in the body is like sitting in the balcony in a theater. You take a balcony seat in the theater of the body and mind and just watching this body sitting, I guess, breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. And you make that as your primary focus of developing concentration. And it's also the connection to the present moment. Because whenever you're remembering what the body is doing, it's doing it in the present moment. So you take that into walking and also the other movements. So in the section on clear comprehension, after observing the 4 postures, then in all your different movements, whether you're bending, stretching, going here or there, you're developing these, the clear comprehension of why are we using this body? Why is this body going here? Why is it standing up? Why is your arm stretching out? Is it going to be something useful or not? So the movements of the body become a very powerful extension and continuation of the meditation. It's not something you do just when you're sitting, but the Buddha wanted us to bring us out. And it's that connection to the present moment that's what's really important, because it's the present moment where we're able to really see the process of the mind going from sensation to perception to volition, and then the ego consciousness, which are the 5 aggregates. Now, also, as we mentioned before, the Venerable Gnanadīpa also practiced yoga, and he told me when I first met him that he practiced the headstand for 20 minutes every day. And I was also doing that too, as well as other yoga exercises, because as I mentioned in the beginning, the meditation happens between the brain and the spinal column. So if you're slouching, the mind will remain kind of in a half drowsy state or just lost in your thoughts. Or if you're slouching also, then you'll get pains in different places. So when you sit straight, then that helps to minimize the pain. But gravity is always trying to pull us down, right? We have this big head that weighs maybe 5 pounds, sitting on a small neck vertebrae about that big around. And so gravity is always trying to pull us down. And if we don't have attention to the body, this gravity, gradually pulls us down, and we wind up sitting like this without even knowing it. It's because our muscles are weak. We don't practice the exercises that strengthen the muscles of the back and the spine, as well as the neck. So in yoga, many of the exercises are designed for strengthening the muscles of the back and the spine and the neck, and also flexing, getting flexibility in your hips and ankles, because that's what is, when you're sitting in the cross-legged position, the parts that get the most pain if they're stiff. And so it's the circulation of the body, of the life force through the body, that helps keep the mind alert. And so that's one of the primary reasons why also yoga is very helpful in that, and why Venerable Gnanadīpa practiced yoga, and why I practiced and still am, and have gotten the benefits of doing that. And it helps to get you centered in the body. If you just rush in and you're in a hurry to meditate, you just get out of your car, you run in your house, sit down, try to concentrate your mind on your breathing without doing anything else, you're going to wind up having a lot of hindrances, and it'll be much more difficult to stay concentrated. But if you do some gentle breathing and stretching before you sit to meditate, it's like you've already reached you're already meditating while you're doing the yoga. So when you sit to meditate, you're already there for the most part. And then it's just a matter of focusing your attention more directly onto one point, such as the breathing, or begin your exploration, because you're already grounded and centered in the body through the yoga practice. So that's one of the main benefits that also, and helps why the yoga is useful in learning how to sit comfortably in the body and minimize pain, because pain is one of the biggest distractions, and sleepiness. So pain and sleepiness are some of the biggest hindrances that disturb beginners. So loosening up the body in that way with the yoga helps to minimize that. And that's what I try to encourage people to work with, and also developing deep, slow breathing. But as I mentioned, so the mindfulness of the body, at the end of the mindfulness of the body sutta, of course, after going through the four elements, then the Buddha talks about the cemetery contemplations, where you see the decomposition of the body and the gradual decay of the body until it just becomes a pile of dust, bone dust. So you've gone from this big solid 150-pound plus body into just a couple of handfuls of bone powder at the end, which then a strong wind comes by and blows these bone dust into nothingness, basically. So it's a whole contemplation like that, starting from the gross outer body to gradually getting under the skin to feel the vibration body, which is the four elements. And then also using that as knowing how that all we experience through the senses are vibrations. And the sound vibrations coming through the ear, and the smell, taste vibrations. And how it's the mind that matches up these vibrations with perceptions, and then recreates through perception the idea of a solid body that's existing in time and space, but all that's created in the mind. So the mindfulness of the body sutta sets the whole stage for the rest of the foundations of mindfulness. And after each of the sections of mindfulness of the body says, okay, there are these four elements just for the sake of knowledge and remembrance. And the meditator remains aloof and detached, not clinging to any of these four elements or anything else in the world. And so it's, and he repeats that phrase for all of the, other aspects of the Satipatthana too, for feelings, mind states, and so on. And so that's why the mindfulness of the body, I see it as a gradual progression. Some people think, oh, you can just practice one or other of the four foundations of mindfulness, and take your pick, and You know, if you try to just go immediately to mindfulness of the Dhamma, which is very deep, without the first developing initial concentration, being able to endure discomforts, and gaining ideally the strength level of jhanic concentration, then your contemplation of feelings and mind states will be much more difficult, because you need that concentration to be able to observe the subtler and subtler vibrations that are going on. And even perception is a mental vibration, seeing the moment the perceptions arise in the mind and how that triggers off the reactions. So you have to be very deeply focused to do that. So the mindfulness of the body helps that. And mindfulness of the body sutta is one of the only other suttas, except for the Satipatthana Sutra itself, where the Buddha said this contemplation of the body, if developed and made a vehicle of, leads to the deathless state. So from my recollection of the suttas, it's only those two that the Buddha directly said that directly leads to the deathless, the four foundations of mindfulness and the mindfulness of the body. Because again, the mind's contained within the body. And so by developing mindfulness of the body, you basically understand the mind also. So, and again, the yoga exercise is what helps you get centered in the body and develop the flexibility of the body and to have a good circulation, and also just to have a better health, because health is a great advantage. The Buddha said having good health is a blessing. And if people don't practice the right exercise and so on, they're all stiff, and then it's going to be a constant burden to them. So that's why Gnanadīpa appreciated that, and that's why I also, encourage, because that's a big problem for meditators. So, that's how I've been, cultivating the practice. And so I know a lot of other things could be said about it, but I just wanted to, set this opening stage, and I wanted to honor the memory of Venerable Gnanadīpa and his tradition of the exemplary monk's life, the forest monk's life, and his use of the suttas for grounding his meditation practice. And also he encouraged me, and when I found out that he was always doing yoga, that encouraged me, because at the time, as a Buddhist monk, that I started yoga back in the early 70s, very, very few or none that I knew of were practicing anything like yoga. In fact, yoga was seen as a kind of a dirty word. Oh, you practice yoga. That belongs to Hinduism, So there was kind of a negative attitude for Buddhists practicing yoga back in those days. Now, of course, it's much more accepted. But I appreciated Gnanadīpa, how he was at the same time doing that, and appreciated that. So he helped to inspire me in continuing my practice of yoga, as well as the forest tradition to overcome fears, and the fear of dying or the fear of getting hurt. So, even though he had these experiences with poisonous snakes and elephants and so on, he didn't let that fear him. He always went back. He never said, oh, I got bit by a snake, I'll never go in the forest again. Or, oh, an elephant hurt me, I'm never going to go back in the forest. No, he deliberately went right back in to face his fears. And this is what I also highly appreciated about Venerable Gnanadīpa. And even when he was in his advanced old age, he was still going pindapata as long as he could almost walk. So friends, I know I want to finish up this talk now, and I know there's going to be another session shortly. So I want to take a couple of minutes break to use the restroom if you need to. And then as part of this program, we're going to come back, and I'm going to lead you through just a couple of simple breathing and stretching exercises before we sit to meditate. So I'll hand the program back to Venerable Panya Vamsa. Should I turn off my video? Okay.
I'm sorry. So we will now be going into a break. So we will come back together at 1:55. Bhante will be conducting a meditation for 30 minutes, after which we'll be going into question and answers. So I would like to remind everyone, if you have any questions that you would like Bhante to answer, also keeping in mind that Bhante will also be attending the 5th week panel discussion where you could ask questions again from Bhante. So if you have any questions for Bhante today, you are most welcome to put them down on the chat, and we will coordinate the questions So we will see you back in 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
So I'm back now, and so we're going to now have a few some breathing and some simple stretches before we sit to meditate, because hopefully that'll help you to have a good body-centered awareness. So you can stand up behind your seat if you have just a little space. To turn the camera up. So just try to stand straight. Relax your shoulders and arms at the sides. Just feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to just mentally feel the outline of the standing body, and then begin taking a few deep, slow breaths. Try to draw the air from the lower lung up through the middle into the upper part of the chest. Feel that expansion. Hold the air in the lungs 2 seconds, and on the out breath, slowly breathe out, feeling the contraction of the lungs and chest. Just take a couple more deep, slow breaths to oxygenate the blood, activate the cells of the body with oxygen. And these few simple exercises we're going to coordinate this deep, slow breathing with the movements. They're quite simple movements. So you can open the eyes and observe on me as I lead you through these exercises. So on the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, and straighten the arms and stretch your head back to look at the back of your hands. On the out-breath, turn the palms down and touch the top of your head. We repeat each exercise 3 times. So again, in-breath, palms up, straighten the arms, arch your back a little bit. Out breath, touch the top of the head. Once more, 3rd time, try to hold that upward stretch longer. Feel the sensation. Now release your fingers on the out breath, bring the arms back to the sides, and then relax. Close the eyes, try to feel the increased body sensations, the increased pulsation in your fingers or hands, maybe the clothing touching the skin, or just any other body sensations. Just remember the present moment of standing, standing, standing. And then on the next in-breath, push up on the toes and raise the arms over the head in this way, facing the palms about 6 inches apart. On the out-breath, bring the arms back to the sides, lower the heels back to the floor. Just try to coordinate those movements with the breath. Use the breath to help lift up the body. Drawing the air into the upper chest. Out breath. Once more. In breath. Stretch. Out breath. Just relax. Keep the attention focused in the body. Feel the increased body sensations, maybe the heartbeat. Just let go of your thoughts. Just let your thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Just keep the feeling of the breathing body in the front of the awareness. Just remember standing, standing, standing. It's the present moment of the body. Feeling the feet pressing the floor, the arms and hands at the sides, the head balanced on top. There's just one last exercise, the head turning from right to left. So on an in-breath, just turn your head to the right as far as you comfortably can. Look over your right shoulder, turn your eyes to the right, and see something behind you. On the out-breath, turn the head 180 degrees back to the left. To look over the left shoulder, turn the eyes to the left. In-breath back to the right. Concentrate into the neck vertebrae, imagining them loosening up. Out breath left. Once more to each side, in breath to the right. Out breath left. On the in-breath, let the head stop in the center. Just relax, close the eyes, just feel the whole standing body. Just remember standing, standing. Don't give the mind time to get lost in the thoughts. The body is always here and now. It's the anchor for consciousness. Just try to feel that organic aliveness of the whole body. Okay, friends, so let's come back to your seat for meditation practice. So friends, I'm going to be giving you a guided meditation now. And again, using the body as our sort of central focus. And hopefully having done those few exercises, you might have gotten a little bit more feeling in the body. And we use that. And the purpose of doing the yoga is to help that body connection, that connection to the body in terms of sensations in the present moment, to help us anchor in the present moment. So just try to sit straight, kind of get comfortable in your sitting posture. If you're sitting in a chair, try to keep your feet flat on the floor. Just have your hands resting one on top of the other in your lap, or your hands resting on your legs. Just gently close the eyes. And first of all, just feel the weight of the body pressing the seat. Just feel where the buttocks and the feet press the floor. Just feel that solid contact. That's the earth vibration. Just remember that you're sitting. Now you're sitting. And let the awareness kind of move up a bit to feel your hands and fingers. Feel your thumbs. Try to feel the outline of your thumbs or fingers and the subtle pulsation. And feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Just relax the shoulders. Feel where the clothing touches the skin of the shoulders, or arms, or upper chest. The present moment sensation. And just keep remembering sitting, sitting. Then feel the head balanced on top. Try to keep your chin lifted up, level, parallel with the floor. Kind of gently straighten up the back. Kind of imagine gently lifting up the spine so there's space between the spinal vertebrae so the blood and electrical energy can freely circulate. And feel the head balanced on top. And feel some sensations on your face. Imagine the skin of the face stretched over the skull. Feel some sensation. Try to feel your lips touching together. The upper lip touching the lower lip. Feel the dryness or the moistness. Just the raw sensations. The earth element, or the water element, or the moisture. Try to feel the tongue laying in the mouth, the saliva. So the earth vibration, the water vibration. And feel the outer nose. Take a few deep, slow breaths. Try to feel the air moving through the nostrils. Just knowing that thousands of times per day, the life force is silently moving in and out of the nostrils, keeping this body alive, but we never know it. And just continue the deeper breathing. And just feel the eyes resting in the sockets, and the eyelids stretched over the eyeballs. You might see some light or color. You might feel some eye movement. Feel the blood, pulse of blood in the capillaries of the eyes. And from this point behind the eyes, just try to feel the outline of the body. Just let the awareness expand slightly. Feel the general or vague outline of the sitting body. Sensations of the buttocks or feet underneath, the arms and hands at the sides, the head balanced on top. And just mentally remember sitting, sitting, sitting. Just finding the door of the laboratory. Then begin again with some deep, slow breathing to help draw the mind deeper into the body. Try to take 2 or 3 seconds to breathe in, expand the lungs, hold the air in the lungs for 2 seconds to feel the pause, to allow the oxygen to get into the bloodstream, and feel the relaxing contraction of the out breath. Just take a few deep, slow breaths like that, feeling the whole breath body, the whole in-breath and the pause, the whole contracting out breath and the pause. Just cultivating this mindfulness, Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Breathing in, feeling the body in the body. Breathing out, feeling the body in the body. Feeling the breathing within this larger body. With each out breath, just allowing the awareness to settle, center in the middle of the breathing body. Then we're going to try counting the breaths from 1 to 10 to kind of gain a better concentration. So with the next expanding in breath, just mentally count 1. Feel the brief pause. With the contracting out breath, also count 1. The next expanding in breath, count 2. Contracting out breath, 2. Next in breath, 3. Out breath, 3. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In breath, 5. Out breath, 5. In breath, 6. Out breath, 6. In breath, 7. Out breath, 7. In breath, 8. Out breath, 8. In breath, 9. Out breath, 9. In breath, 10. Out breath, 10. Now discontinue the counting, discontinue any controlled breathing, letting the breath return to its uncontrolled pattern, but continue to feel it, to observe it with a detached, onlooking awareness. Just knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. You know it by feeling it, feeling the subtle sensations, vibrations. Whether you're feeling the sensation of the air moving through the nostrils with the nose tip, or feeling the expanding and contracting of the lungs. And try to notice those 4 phases of the breathing, the whole in-breath, the brief pause, the whole out-breath, and the brief pause. You can just mentally remember just breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. It's the ongoing, continuous connection to the present moment. This breathing body is the natural connection to the present moment. It's breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting, breath by breath, moment by moment. Definition of mindfulness is not forgetting the present moment. Just breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. Just make that your vitaka, vichara, sustain, continue focus of the mind. Just feeling subtler sensations of the breathing, but at the same time being alert for mental activity, being alert for thoughts trying to sneak up into the mind. Just letting go of the thoughts. Just let the thoughts come and go in the back of the awareness. Just keep the breathing body in the front of the awareness. Just feeling the body in the body, the breathing body within the larger body. So even while feeling the breathing, you can notice other sensations coming and going in the body, itchy, scratchy feelings, some aches or pains. especially with each out breath, just allowing the body and mind to relax more and more into the present moment, feeling subtler sensations, the vibrations of the four elements, all the body vibrations, sensations are just the four elemental vibrations that we then identify as body parts. Identify the body parts as belonging to my body. It's all created in the mind through memory, perception. If you notice any tension in the body, relax that tension. It's physical tension or mental tension. Tell yourself to relax, relax. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Sensations come and go. Perceptions and thoughts come and go. Emotional, physical reactions come and go. Five hindrances come and go. These are all just a continuous stream of impermanence of the body and mind. But just underneath all of that change or mental chaos or pain is the ever-present dimension of now, of the present moment. Represented by the breathing. Whatever else may be happening in the body or mind, the breath is always going in and out. The body is sitting. So breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. If we lose this connection to the breathing body, the present moment, and the mind gets easily dragged under the waves of greed, hatred, and delusions, guilt, worry, fear, anxiety. That connection to the breathing helps to keep the mind afloat. This breathing body is like the life preserver to the present moment. Just floating with the waves of impermanence without getting dragged underneath. The sounds are heard where you are. It's just hearing, just hearing vibrations arising and vanishing through the space of breathing body awareness. Just balancing the factors of concentration and mindfulness. The concentration is that continuous connection to the present moment, the breathing body. The mindfulness is the background alertness for hindrances arising or other distractions. To be able to let go of them or to apply the appropriate right effort to release that distraction and the hindrances, to reconnect, recenter in the present moment, the flow of impermanence. The mind is centered or clear enough, then just try to identify the 5 aggregates. This is material form. This is feeling. This is perception. This is mental activity, urges, ideas. This is the ego consciousness. It's the rising and vanishing through the space of present moment awareness. All of these 5 aggregates, this is not me, not mine, not myself. Simply conditioned phenomenon from the past karma, held together by ignorance and craving. Just try to get the feeling of this body and mind being like an empty house. with nobody home, knocking on the doors and windows. There's a sensitive microphone in the house. Awareness that knows but yet doesn't know, cannot react. So what perceptions arise in the mind? Dependence on that sound. Sabbe sankhara anicchati. Sabbe sankhara dukkati. Sabbe dhamma anattati. Yada panyaya pasati. Atani bindati dukkhi. Isamagngu visuddhya. All conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. All impermanent things, when clung to with ignorance, bring stress and suffering. And all dhammas, the conditioned as well as the unconditioned, are without any owner or controller. They're not self. When one understands these three characteristics with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Okay, now you can place your hands at the edge of the knees. And slowly come out of the meditation. Take a deep in breath. And on the in breath, stretch your head back and pull the hands against the knees to arch your lower spine. And breathe in, lift the head up, and on an out breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. And lift the chin up level on the in breath. And relax on the out breath. Put a smile on your face. Okay, friends, So I hope you're able to have a peaceful or insightful short meditation practice. And now, per the schedule, I think we want to open up to see if there's any questions that might have come up based on my the talk or the meditation practice. So I don't know if there's, it doesn't look like there's any chats.
There are some questions, Bhante, which has been.
Oh, okay.
And also we are taking questions from Facebook Live as well. So Tina has asked, when we do walking meditation, there are so many movements, pains, sounds. What is it that we should focus on, she has asked? And how do we keep focus upon one thing whilst there are so many others, objects around as we walk?
Well, walking meditation is a combination of both concentration and awareness, which is the same what I mentioned in the meditation practice. So in the walking, we try to focus on the steps of our feet. That means and impermanence, how you lift the foot up and you try to do it slow enough that you feel the foot lifting up. And there's a beginning and an end. You swing the foot forward, that's a different movement. You lower the foot to the floor is another movement and command of the mind. And the body shifts forward to get ready for the next step. So you try to follow those sequential movements of the foot. You have to do it slow enough that you can feel out each of those as a separate movement and involves a different mental command. To lift the foot is one, to swing it forward is another, to lower the foot to the floor is another, and to shift the body forward is another. There's even more than that, but to keep it simple. And then it just repeats itself. Now, while you're doing that, so that's the focus of your concentration. To remember that you're walking, but at the same time, you can't avoid sounds coming and going, other sensations on your body, and even thoughts in your mind. So just like in sitting meditation, you have to be mindful of that. So you can let go of this, any potential distractions, the urge to want to look at something or so on, and to always come back. So the walking takes the place of your breathing, basically, or any other movement. If you're standing and then you're going to move your arm, you should do the movement of the arm in the same way. You know, lifting, stretching, opening your hand, closing your hand, turning. You try to do each of those. That way you gain impermanence. This is the contemplation of impermanence when you're doing movement of meditation, into seeing how the body-mind nama-rupa process. You see, the body can't do anything without an intention preceding it in the mind. So this is the beginning of developing deeper level of wisdom and bringing meditation off the cushion. So many people think meditation is just something you do when you're sitting. But no, that's the marvel and the wonder of the Buddhist teaching on this, the practice of body movement and clear comprehension. Is you bring the meditation off the cushion and you apply it in daily life, is where you are making most of your karma while you're doing movements in your daily life. So by practicing it in a controlled setting, such as a formal, you'll be able to gradually practice it little by little. As your body moves quicker in your daily life, you're aware of that too.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, Bhante. And thank you, Tina, for the question. Bhante, the other question that we have is, with the COVID-19 situation and the UK also going into lockdown on Thursday, we come to face the challenges of having to develop a meditative spiritual practice whilst also going through the stresses of the time. And a big part of that stress is also being at home, maybe domestic issues and all of these things. How could we, or what advice could we give our participants in sort of developing a Vipassana practice with these difficulties, especially arising from family?
Well, actually, you could call it a blessing in disguise, because, if there wasn't these restrictions about traveling or lockdowns, people would still, get easily, oh, let's go here and there, do this and that, people inviting you to come here and that. So people find out they don't have much time to meditate. But now, given these lockdowns, and especially as you mentioned, Britain is going into more strict lockdown, you have no excuse why you don't have more time to meditate. And then also to increase your mindfulness, if you're with your relatives and your family members more and more, where there's potential for distractions, that's when you have to, don't focus on concentration so much. You got to focus on awareness and watching your reactions to what's going on with your family members, and to develop metta, maitri and compassion and sympathetic joy, the Brahma Viharas, to your family members or anybody else you come into contact with. But the sitting meditation helps to balance that. So actually, it should be a wonderful time for increasing one's Dhamma practice, because you shouldn't really have any excuse, but still the mind will get distracted, or will want to watch old reruns on the movies or whatever, watch politics, watch the American election and all this stuff that damage your mind. I heard on the news even that, in Britain, they're betting on the American election, and people are spending millions of dollars betting on who's going to win the election. I mean, So, so I would encourage people to use this time and all the Zoom programs like this one, and the Zoom programs that Venerable Panyavamsa is also providing, and my own center, we're having every week a couple of, so many, countless programs that you could be listening to Dhamma the whole time if you really wanted to, because of the time changes. There's Dhamma programs on the internet, everywhere. So, in that way, I encourage you to make the best of that, because when it's over, then people have all this, then they're going to want to make up for missed time, and then their meditation will, go out the window almost. Hopefully not, but, you get distracted. So see this as a blessing in disguise, not necessarily as a curse. Of course, if you have loved ones who are dying, and then that's another issue. But we can also contemplate death and the reality of the fragility of life, and that, the four any's. Anything can happen to anybody in any place at any time. Get sick, die, anything. So this is the nature of the Dhamma.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bhante. If anyone has any questions, they are most welcome to put it down on the chat section, and we'll continue to take questions from Facebook as well as the Zoom chats. Bhante, another question that we have is regarding the practice of Venerable Gnanadīpa. Venerable Gnanadīpa was known for his ascetic practices. What kind of a prominent place does austerity have in Buddhism? Is it something which is important? Is it something which is sort of recommended in the teachings?
Well, I think it was in a Dhammapada verse, the Buddha mentioned that patience is the highest austerity. So that means enduring unpleasant sensations, all the six senses, the inputs, having patience in being able to endure the unpleasant, painful sensations, sound, smells, taste, whatever is occurring, that's the highest austerity. So when the monks practiced the dhutangas back in the day, then they were deliberately, they were doing it on purpose to endure the pain and deprivation, because it strengthens the mind. We're always trying to seek more and more comfort. So the austerities help you to be more content with little, and to endure discomfort, and know that it's all created in the mind. And the mind can endure a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort very easily once it's trained. And so Venerable Gnanadīpa didn't see that as probably an austerity. That's the path, for monks, of course, And that's why monks may choose this life, because it provides them that opportunity that they won't get because the rest of your family and others won't appreciate you doing that. You can practice a few, like eating once a day, of course, it's not a big deal. Or not watching shows and TVs, but the other ones were made for monks, the 13 dhutanga practices. But for periods of time, you could practice that, or some of them, and some people do that, and to build a mental strength from that.
Thank you, Bhante. So we have another question by Leonie. Venerable, you mentioned there are other aspects to be aware of when walking in meditation, besides the four you mentioned. Please expand to say what would that be?
Well, if you hear a sound and you have the urge to want to look, be aware of that. Notice that, distraction by sound, or just notice the urge to look, and to try to let it go of it. Is it really going to be any benefit to look? I mean, maybe it would be if you noticed, you heard your child screaming in the background. Okay, then you have to use your common sense and maybe look, but it was just, something else, or thoughts in your mind. You're starting to question, why am I doing this? Okay, doubts. You have to identify the hindrances or any other distractions. So it's not different than meditation. It's just applying the Satipatthana awareness, Vipassana, while you're doing activity, as opposed to just sitting in stillness. So any distraction of the mind is what you look at. But when there's no distraction, you come back and you stay with the present moment. The present moment is the object of the meditation, not the object so much. The objects are coming and going through the present moment awareness. Lifting, swinging, placing, and other body sensations, but at the same time, you got thoughts in your mind, you got sounds, and so on. So anything that's taking us away from the present moment, you have to notice that. You have to try to let go of it, or apply the appropriate right effort to let go of the unwholesome, to cultivate the wholesome, and then to come back and stay grounded and connected to that the present moment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bhante. And a question that I feel like a lot of people might be having is, Bhante, how to correctly practice Dhamma while visiting the grave of a beloved one without being dragged by sadness and sorrow?
Well, for one thing, it depends on how the person died, right? So if it's a young person who was murdered or died young, it's much more difficult to accept that. But of course, we have to reflect on karma too. But if it was an older person, like my mother, she died 102 years old. I couldn't feel sad about it. I was happy for her because she was released from the prison of her body. So other people that have died at an old age and a gradual death, you reflect on that actually remember the joys and happiness that you had with that person. And maybe that'll help you get off your, most people feel sad about people because it's selfish. They're lonely now. They don't have their mother's shoulder to cry on or anybody else to comfort. So they're left on their own resources. And so they feel sad about that, but that's selfish. That person may have wanted to die. My mother wanted to die for the last couple of years. She was 102 years old. But, so I wasn't sad about it. I was happy that she was released from the body. So that's why we have to reflect on impermanence when we visit the graves and so on. And we have to remember the good qualities of the person, not our own sadness about it. But we have to understand that affection brings suffering. And that's what the Buddha taught. And to know that death is natural, and the fact that you're going to be in that grave one day, too. So, and that the four ennies, reflect on the four ennies, that anything can happen, even the young people. Young people get killed all the time in accidents and drugs and so many things, unknown diseases. because karma is always lurking there behind us. We don't know what's going to come up. We have to accept it.
With relation to that question, Bhante, there is shadow integration is a topic that is gaining a lot of popularity within today's spirituality. What part does shadow integration play in better processing these feelings of grief, sorrow, sadness, when it comes to specifically losing a person that we love?
Well, actually, that's the first time I've heard this term shadow integration. It's the first time I've heard of it, actually. But I presume it means, the underlying causes and conditions that we're unaware of, the past karmic impressions that we have in us that cause us to react in one way or another when something happens, like the grief and sorrow and sadness. It comes from, again, just the fact of the attachment that we have to our loved ones. And karma is a very strong power, and especially with families. And we could have gone back many lifetimes in the past, having had the same father or mother or brother or sisters and so on. These strong propensities for people have when they meet people, they immediately might hate somebody or love somebody for no reason. So these might be the shadow reasons why we get affected. Know that it's past karma. And there's nothing bad about it, but we just have to understand how these karmas can, be a good ones, or they could be bad ones if they're bad habits and they were holding on to this anger. We don't know why we're angry at a person, but maybe if we knew that we had fought with them in a past life and hadn't forgiven them, then this is the shadow that's following us around. And we might have to meet these people again in this life and resolve the issues. That's the whole point. Life is about resolving all the issues that we've accumulated, the issues of impermanence, the issues of attachment, the issues of ego. And if we don't learn the lesson, we have to repeat it. It's like a schoolroom. Each life is like a grade in the school, And if you don't learn the lessons of the particular grade you flunk, then you got to start over. You got to get recycled again. And so we have to learn the lessons about, what are the lessons? About greed, attachment, delusion, and all the other things that cause us suffering. And karma is an evolutionary tool. It helps us to, same thing keeps happening to us over and over. There's got to be a reason for this. Other people are not having this. They have different issues. And we have to learn from that. What is this attachment causing me? What is this suffering trying to tell me? And we have to learn from it and let go of it. If we don't learn from it, we're going to have to meet it again in the future.
That's a very interesting point, Bhante. Thank you so much. We have a question with regards to the practice of the meditation that we spoke today. I understand for the first time that there are 4 points in the breathing cycle. With the pauses, I heard for the first time. I feel the pause after exhalation is where the relaxation happens for me. Yes. How would you explain the pause after the inhalation? Also, on a minor issue, when you stay in one pause, specifically leg crossed for a long time, how do you deal with the numbness or the pain you feel and continue?
Well, I know that the pauses are not directly mentioned in the instructions on Anapanasati, but this is something that a person learns on their own. That there are these pauses, even though for a lot of people the pause is maybe just a microsecond, but usually the mind wanders in the pause. And so after the in-breath, it's important not to let the mind then wander, but to feel the pause, and then you'll be there for the beginning of the out-breath. And if you're aware of the pause after the out-breath, you have something to focus on. And so you can keep the mind constant. If you don't have something to focus on, if you just think it's breathing in and out, what happens during the pause? The mind, escapes. So that's what I found in my own practice, and especially doing yoga, where we develop deep, slow breathing and the pauses increase. Because the brain and thinking depends on oxygen. So, and when you're holding the breath in, you can't really think. It's such a strong sensation. And it takes almost all your effort to kind of just to feel that pause with the breath in. And so it's like in your face. And so you can't think of nothing else. And then when you let the breath out, there's no oxygen getting to the brain, so the brain can't think. And you can feel that pause. And the pause can actually get quite long. And that's when you feel the present moment. It's in the pauses where you feel the present moment, because there's no object to distract you, because the breath isn't moving in or out. And so that's, in my own personal practice, that's what I've understood to be the important part about cultivating. And that's the whole breath. That's what's called the whole breath body. The pause is part of the breath body. It's the connection between the in and out breath. And by deliberately doing deep, slow breathing, it helps to magnify that, and it helps you to get centered in that. So some people say it's a distraction, but I don't feel it a distraction at all. Not in the beginning. Later, when you're getting it deeper into, like towards the jhana, then letting go of trying to control your breath or do deep breathing is good. But in the beginning, when you still have an active mind, learning how to regulate the breathing, especially in a very mellow way, in a very relaxed way, in reducing your amount of respirations from the normal 10 or 15 respirations a minute down to just 3 or 4 or even just 2. The mind enters a very deep, you can gain first jhana even doing for because that's vitakka and vichara is applied and sustained attention to the breathing. So even if you're regulating the breathing, it's still applied and sustained attention.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you. One last question, Bhante, before we have to wrap up the session. And this is about compassion. How do you balance compassion for others with compassion for yourself when there is a lot being required of you? Sometimes it's difficult to continue giving when you are tired, stressed, etc. Or there is anger, frustration, or dissatisfaction directed at you. I would be grateful for the advice to help with this. Bhante, I would also like to sort of link this up with the beautiful Dhammapada that you mentioned earlier, that the best austerity is patience. And I would also, saying that, I would like to bring up the scenario between the Buddha and Alavaka Yakka, where there was an interaction where Alavaka would say, come in, go out, come in, go out to the Buddha. And the Buddha at last, he said, no, Alavaka, no more. So there the Buddha sort of, Bhante, he says, no more, I'm not going to do what you say anymore. Bhante, please.
No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Sure, compassion is a very positive mental state where we try to help others, but there's a certain limit. And the Buddha, in other instances as well, he said, if you don't find a companion that's equal to you or better, go by yourself. And not to put up with, avoid unwholesome people, avoid bad friends, right? So some people might say, well, that's not compassionate, but in one sense, we're working on our own liberation, but at the same time, we know that there's no self. This I is an illusion, but nevertheless, we have to reach a good, stable state of, within our own consciousness to be able to help others. So one who helps others helps himself, and one who helps themselves helps others. So in the practice of compassion, some people may not want to be helped. We may bend over backwards trying to get somebody to go to, therapy, get somebody to, get off drugs, or give them books to read on Dhamma, but they may not be ready to accept it. And at some point, we have to say, okay, equanimity. That's what the Brahma Viharas are. The Brahma Viharas are a gradual practice. First, you practice metta because that's the easiest one to practice, just to be friendly to people, right? Not to be angry and so on. But then you practice compassion. You can't practice compassion without metta, because how can you help somebody else if you're not even friendly toward them? So, and then sympathetic joy is even harder to practice than compassion, because sympathetic joy reaches your ego deeper. Oh, how can I be happy at this person getting my job, And so the ego doesn't, like others to win over themselves. And then equanimity, at the end, you let go of all of that. So first of you actively practice metta, compassion, sympathetic, and then in the end you let go of all of that and dwell in equanimity. So the same way, you bend over backwards trying to help somebody. If they don't want to listen and they're causing your mind more agitation, at some point you have to say, look, this person has their own karma to work out, and let it go. I know what some people may say that, sounds selfish, but each person has got to practice it for how they feel. We do what we can, but in the end, we have to understand karma, that everybody has, and even if it means letting that person get harmed and get their hand in the fire, sometimes that's the only way people learn. And we know we can't really control anybody else, but we try. But at some point, we have to let it go and practice equanimity.
Thank you so much, Bhante, and thank you for all your efforts in making this session so enlightening to all our participants. And I would also like to thank you on behalf of everyone at the Dhamma Center and all our participants for taking up our invitation and making time for this session. And Bhante was very enthusiastic to be a part of the session as respect, actually, because of Bhante Gnanadīpa. So this whole session, this series of the Satipatthana is wholly dedicated to the practice and life of Venerable Gnanadīpa. Venerable Gnanadīpa being such an eminent figure who has motivated so many monks and of course lay people, but specifically monks of the forest tradition in Sri Lanka and beyond, has been a motivation for decades for venerables to practice and live in the forest and to experience that life. Bhante Rahula has a beautiful blog that he has written about his experiences of meeting Venerable Gnanadīpa, and that is actually why I thought Bhante Rahula would be the best person to sort of open up today's session and also speak about his experiences with Bhante Gnanadīpa. So I have put Bhante Rahula's information. Bhante Rahula is also doing courses online, which you can join if you visit Bhante Rahula's website, which is, if you would search Lion of Wisdom Center in Maryland, you would find all the details there. And the session is going to continue for the coming 4 Saturdays. The 5th Saturday, we will be having a panel discussion with Bhante and also other invited guest speakers. So make sure that you do join. And if you do have any questions, you are most welcome to sort of ask during those sessions as well. We would, of course, suggest that you do have a daily practice of meditation as you go through these weeks, learning and studying this Satipatthana, and also to do a bit of reading yourself to better prepare you for the sessions that are to come. If you do wish to be kept in the loop regarding future sessions and programs that we have lined up for you, you can do so by subscribing to Dhamma Center at www.dhammacenter.uk. And Thank you very much for everyone who has joined. Bhante, Rahula, my veneration to you. Thank you so much for making this afternoon such an enlightening afternoon, Bhante. Much reverence to you on behalf of everyone who has joined, Bhante. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants who have made time for the session today. I hope that the session has surely been something beneficial to all of you. Take care and have a good rest of the day.